Hey, what's up, everybody?
What's going on?
This is Tony.
And I'm Jenny.
And we are Lido Loca, and this is the Lido Loca Cruise Podcast.
The podcast? What?
Cruise Podcast. It's episode 13.
Lucky 13.
Lucky for you.
Well, yeah.
And lucky for me.
Yeah.
Jenny,
Why is 13 lucky?
I don't know. It's unlucky, I think.
So you want to know something odd, right? Like in the...
13 is an odd number. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, 13 is an odd number.
Just like
13
15.
is usually, there's not a 13th floor here in North America, blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
But on the MSC...
MSC what?
Seaside in the Divina,
Yeah.
there is a deck 13.
They're not superstitious on that ship.
No, well, they don't have deck 17.
Would you stay on deck 13 on a ship?
So we could have, but I decided not to.
What's your feelings about black cats?
I don't like. It doesn't bother me.
You don't think they're bad luck?
I don't think so. I think they're kind of pretty, especially when they have green eyes.
What are some other common superstitions? Will you walk under a open ladder?
No.
Will you open an umbrella inside?
Yeah.
Do you feel unlucky if you break a mirror?
No. So going under a ladder can fall at any time. Umbrella, no big. And when you dance like nobody's watching, maybe you want to pretend you're dancing in the rain.
I'm not opening an umbrella inside.
And then what was
It's
the
bad
other
luck.
one?
I don't know. Black cats.
Yeah.
Black cats. Well, it does seem like, I don't know if we would call it luck, but it is a challenging time in the world today.
It is.
And there, of course, all major cruise lines have suspended their operations. And so this is a fairly uncertain time. And you and I are social distancing. We work from home. So we basically haven't been leaving the house. We haven't been socially distant from each other. I don't think that's possible. But maybe let's talk a little bit about what it's like to be living with uncertainty. What have you been doing to make yourself not go crazy? Have you been doing anything on a daily basis to deal with all the challenges that we're facing currently?
I haven't seen family for a couple of weeks, which is a little different. And, I haven't changed anything. We work from home, so... I don't do anything different.
So you don't feel any of this, you don't feel any stress or any tension because of what's going on right now?
No, and I'm not even getting a little stir crazy. Like, I saw a meme, like for people that are introverted and some people that are extroverted, So, for me, it's like, yeah, I get to stay home and I don't have to, go out into the world.
Yeah.
And I actually have a reason.
So I didn't realize that about you. So you like staying at home? Like, it doesn't bother you too much that you can't go like to your mom's and that kind of stuff?
No.
Wow. Well, to me, it's been a challenge for me because I like to stay at home, but I don't like anybody to tell me that I have to stay at home.
Right.
And so I guess what I've been doing to try to stay calm, because, a lot of people out there, they're worried about, trivial things like, when am I going to get to go cruising again, right?
Right.
It's important because people have money invested and this is a lifestyle, that kind of thing.
Right.
But there are people out there that are already starting to wonder, like, how are they going to pay their bills, or what are they going to do in the future? Are they going to get sick? I tell you, the big thing that I've been worried about mostly is, like, am I going to get sick?
Right. And
how long is all this going to last? I do believe that at my core, I do have a faith and a belief that everything's going to work out okay, right?
Absolutely. It's a little worrisome. We have someone close to us that, has the symptoms of the virus. Still waiting for, the test results. But, it's super worrisome. Like if you do contact it, right, is my body strong enough to fight off what it is?
So when you feel like that, what do you do to get over those feelings?
Then I'm happy and I just stay put in our home.
So that's the motivator to stay at home. Yeah, for me, like when I can easily go down that rabbit hole of being like, all right, I'm afraid I'm getting sick, and what happens if I get sick, and then, but just working every day from the house has been one of those things that kind of keeps me dialed in and kind of keeps me consistent. And so even though a lot of chaos is going on around us, I try to keep some sort of routine. So I try to work every day, and I've been trying to sleep a lot. We've dealt with some sort of illness ourselves, you know, and I don't. The symptoms don't necessarily match up with what's going on in the world, but the timing is kind of frustrating.
Yeah, because maybe we just had, some pollen issues, allergy issues, but like with the timing, it just felt like, do we have it? Are these the symptoms that, could possibly be this virus that's going around? So
So really none of our kids have reached out and said, oh, I'm freaked out. What do I do? They're all pretty emboldened. They're all pretty confident.
They're all in that age of,
they're young.
Yeah.
If somebody did call you and say, man, I'm freaked out, what would you do to calm them down?
I'll be right there. I would jump in the car and
no, not our kids.
child.
I'm just saying, I don't think our kids would reach out, and I don't know that we could just go get our kids. That's an unsettling feeling too. Right. That if one of them called, I don't know that we could just go get them.
Right.
I don't know that would be safe. But like, just if a friend calls and they're saying, oh, I'm really stressed out about it, what would you tell them?
I mean, like just kind of like how normally you would talk to someone, right? Like, you listen to their concerns and, you try not to squash their feelings, like, well, you shouldn't be feeling that. Everybody feels, differently about it.
That's really insightful. That does apply to this circumstance, because if you go like onto social media, or if you go on to people commenting like on our YouTube videos, there is a mix of the way people communicate with each other. And there is a strong population out there that will tell people, well, you just shouldn't feel that way. You should just get over it.
Yeah, and who are they, people feel the way they feel.
Right. And so, yeah, I think that, I guess that's all I'm trying to get out here is, like, I've got some techniques for coping with myself, but then at the same time, we also talk to a lot of people.
Right.
And I think that's a good point that you make, is just making sure that you hear the concerns that the people have, and then try to do their best to calm them down. Now, you have a pretty passenger, friend, community-facing job when it comes to travel stuff. What's it been like with people who are trying to navigate? So just, what's going on in the world. I think we're, 14 days into the cruise lines voluntarily shutting down for a 30-day period. We've already had some cruise lines come out, like Royal Caribbean, extending that shutdown. We're expecting an announcement from Carnival in the next couple of days. That's got to wreak a lot of havoc to people who have cruises booked. What have you been experiencing with people calling in, trying to reschedule their cruise? Is a lot of disappointment, or are people pretty chill about the whole thing? What are people feeling when it comes to cruise and travel and stuff like that?
So I think that because most of my clients have cruised before, they are okay with what the package is, from canceled out sailings. So, they're kind of like, oh, cool, I can go on a bigger ship next time because I have a bigger future cruise credit that was offered from, their canceled sailing. But then I have probably a handful of people that are, a little like, hey, where's my refund? And when is this coming? And, and the cruise lines are doing as good as they can with the abundance of processing refunds and all that. I don't think they were ready for any of this either. And I think that they are really trying to pull from every department that they have. So there's people on the phones that were never on the phones before trying to help, TAs and clients that, don't have a TA representative. So, you have to be a little bit experienced to know, like when I call in, like I'm helping them help me. you know, like, hey, this is what your next step should be, that kind of thing, in order to help me. You know, and then I have people that are dealing with this by themselves, and I'm just trying to help guide them because I can't help them.
Right.
You know, and that's a little frustrating for me. You know, like people that, you know, are going through this by themselves, but I'm there trying to help guide them. Like, hey, you should really call the cruise line, and you know, this is what you should ask, and this is what you know is supposed to be being done. So
that's the interesting thing. Like, you're in a position where you have a lot of experience that other people don't necessarily have, and we're also in the interesting position that we have a whole community of people that we're close with.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's. I mean, look, I'll say it. I think it's great that you make yourself available for that kind of thing, because it can be super frustrating. How are the phone hold times going?
So they are getting better, but you know, it's it's still a little bit of a hold, but it's not horrible. It's not like how it was.
Right.
You know, at the beginning of all of this, it was, you know, what, 3 hours sometimes I was just holding.
Right.
You know, and now it's maybe like a half hour. There's one cruise line that it's still a long wait, but that's okay.
And so do you see that? So we see the cruise lines doing this in 30-day increments. Of course, some of the other cruise lines, like Princess, did like a 60-day shutdown. That
Right
kind of
out the
thing.
bat.
But do you think they stage it like this so that it's easier to manage cancellations, rebooking? Is this kind of helping the flow of the work? Or if they just said, like, for 90 days we're not going to cruise, how much more work would that be from your perspective? And then, of course, if it's more work from your perspective, it's harder for the cruise line. Do you think some of this chopping up how much time they're going to be closed and doing it like 30 days at a time, do you think it's to help that process, or do you think they're just waiting to see what happens?
I think it's kind of a combination of both, right? Like, I don't think that they really want to shut down their business for that long, right? So maybe that's why they're doing it in the 30-day increments to, you know, handle the call volume and handle the cancellation volume. But, you know, and also they don't, even if it's just one day, you know, that they're missing out on being able to sail safely, you know, so maybe that's what, you know, they're doing also.
So, of course, we don't own our own travel agency or anything like that. We work with a partner. There's a lot going on. So we saw just this week the stimulus package come out, or the relief package come out, and there's some question as to whether or not the cruise lines will be eligible to get some sort of relief from that package. And then, of course, that trickles down, like 412,000 jobs affected in the United States based off of the cruising industry. What do you think? Are people concerned? Like, let's just say at our partner level, from a travel agency perspective, do you get a sense that there's a lot of worry going on? Like, if this goes on for a long period of time, this could really affect everybody in a negative way? Or is it still fairly hopeful out there in the aspects of the industry that you see?
I think that as a business as a whole, you know, people are a little concerned, of course. I do feel that I try to stay positive, right? Because the people that I deal with on a daily basis, you know, they love cruising, so they're going to cruise. It's going to come back, and, you know, like, we'll be back, like the Terminator, you know? So.
And we've seen bookings, like,
oh, absolutely.
People are continuing to
you know,
book.
as soon as they're getting their future cruise credit, or as soon as they're, you know, even the thought process of their cruise could be canceled, you know, I'm already in the process of putting stuff on hold, you know, like, hey, this is the cruise that I want if mine cancels, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, so, like, I'm ready to roll once this last cruise line releases their information.
Yeah, so a common question that we get asked is, are cruise prices going up or down? How quickly are people getting money refunded? And do we feel like the cruise prices will go up and down in the future? It seems like some of the prices are higher. Like, it's not like this situation's equaling a lot of very inexpensive cruises. What do you think we have to look forward to once this opens back up? I know it's just speculation, but would you think that there's going to be like, I don't know, more expensive pricing, less expensive pricing?
My speculation is, of course, that, it's all supply and demand. So, you're going to have 60 days of cruises that were canceled.
Right.
So, these people are going to need to rebook. So, of course, supply and demand. And so that's going to increase a little bit. And, quite honestly, I'm sure these cruise lines need to recoup, some money. So do we see an increase in the cruise fares, or are we going to see increases in gratuities and, for the employees that lost wages, or if are they taking, they're taking care of them, but, they rely heavily on tips, so are we going to see an increase in drink packages and, on the back end?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure, because like you say, they're going to have to get their money back, somehow. Hopefully that doesn't come on the backs of the people that are continuing to cruise. And I've talked to
supporting.
I've talked to a lot of people out there, and I don't get the sense from people that are longtime cruisers even first-time cruisers that have only been on one or two cruises. To me, there is a real sense out there still that I'm ready to go cruising.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't see a lot of people backing off from cruising as a vacation type. They're just waiting it out. So hopefully the prices don't get jacked up to this is my concern. Everybody has a good idea of what a cruise costs currently.
Right.
Then say we go through 60 days, 90 days of no cruising, and then when you come back, if that number is drastically higher, I think that could be risky because people will be like, look, I understand you had a tough time. We all just went through a tough time, but I don't want to overpay now just because you had a tough time. So I think it's going to be an interesting dance that the cruise line has to balance, the balancing act, to make sure that they're able to stay viable, to get the money that they need, but not jack up the prices, because people will remember how much cruising cost before this. Right. And I'm sure they'll be worried about what it costs going forward.
Right. And, also you got to think of the countries that they're not visiting, right? So are their port fees going to be more, and their taxes for the ports, So it's going to be interesting, or it could go the other way, right? Like maybe some people are going to be afraid to go on a cruise. Right. And it's going to be like clearance pricing just to get these ships filled.
It's going to be interesting to see that, like there's companies like Virgin that, delayed the start of their whole brand new cruising endeavor. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this affects those kind of companies and whether they're able to rebound. There's a lot of stuff that's going on, like, stuff we take for granted, dry docks, shipbuilding, all that kind of stuff coming to a halt. I know the transformation of the ship that will become the Carnival Radiance, that's been put on hold because of dry dock issues. We haven't seen any official word, but it does feel like maybe the Mardi Gras is being delayed. Mm-hmm. So it will be an interesting time. What's interesting to me too is a lot of the information that's people are getting more in tune with. So as it looked like potentially there would be some sort of government relief package, people started looking and asking the question, should cruise lines get any of that relief? And people, really kind of starting to study and say, well, these may not necessarily be American companies. And I've seen some pushback that way. And so it's interesting in a business that is primarily supported by Americans. Right. This is not necessarily an American company, but it does generate, our livelihood is based on cruising, right?
Right. And there's a lot of American employees, right? Like in the United States, don't they have their headquarters and stuff there?
A lot of headquarters, but that's what I don't know. I've never seen the breakdown. I would love to see by cruise line what the percentage of Americans versus non-Americans are, but Interesting time in cruising.
Very interesting and, very unsettling a little bit.
Unsettling.
Yeah.
So
I do have to say this.
Yes.
It is kind of cool to see the crew out in the sea enjoying those ships.
That's 100% been interesting. We followed a couple people. We followed a guy named Chris Wong on YouTube, who was on Royal Caribbean's Oasis of the Seas. He has since been sent home, but for the first couple weeks of the suspension, he was living on the Oasis of the Seas with only crew members, and they were really treating those guys right. It was like they were cruisers on that cruise ship. They had discounted opportunities to eat at specialty dining. They spent their days by the pool. They still had to do some work. But it was kind of weird just to see a cruise ship only inhabited by the people that work on the cruise ship.
Well, and I think it's on the Celebrity Apex, maybe, wherever Captain Kate is. She's actually allowing them to stay in the staterooms and really just have the same experience.
That is true. And I've heard that on a couple of ships that normally crew quarters are super tight. Where they've got like two people in a very small room sharing a bunk, and now they are allowing them to use some of the bigger rooms, some of the state rooms while they're stuck.
And
on
that's
a cruise
awesome.
ship. Yeah.
I think that first of all, it's important, right, to learn, and like when you're training, right? A lot of times it's good to go through that experience of what you're actually doing. Right? Like when we would open up as kids, when we would open up, like restaurants and stuff, like usually go in as a customer,
Right.
To have that experience to, give better customer service. So I think it's kind of cool. And I'm glad that they're getting that opportunity to experience that.
The soft opening.
Yeah.
Friends and family night.
That's what
Did you ever do that when you were working at Hardee's, help open up a Hardee's and then do friends and family night?
Yeah, do you remember we did that in Nashville at J. Alexander's?
That was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was good.
Who was our friend? Who did we go? Who did we know over there?
This guy Michael. It was a lovely dinner.
We used to do this. So I worked at a big hotel that Opryland owned, that now Gaylord owns, and that was always cool there because we worked at restaurants. Whenever they would open up a new restaurant, you would get to go try it out before customers got to try it out.
That's nice. That's fun.
It was super cool.
Yeah.
Super cool. So we've had a cruise. We had to cancel a cruise on the NCL breakaway.
We did,
and that cruise eventually canceled. We are unsure whether our next cruise, which is supposed to happen in June,
going to Alaska,
from Vancouver to Alaska. Right now, the current state of affairs in Canada is they have closed all their ports to ships that carry more than 500 people total. That's passengers and guests.
Right.
Passengers and guests. That's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Passengers and crew. And so it would seem that our Princess cruise would be canceled in Alaska, but that is yet to be canceled. So, we've gone long periods without cruising before. Do you have the cruise blues? Are you missing anything about that cruise life, or is what's going on so pervasive that you don't really have time to be sad about cruising?
I think that it's so pervasive that I'm not really thinking about being at the sea. But it's also with my work.
Right.
I'm trying to get everybody comfortable and situated that I'm not really having that time to think about when's my next cruise or,
right.
That kind of thing. So
I feel the same way. We both, we make the cruising content. We do things like the podcast. We make videos. And there's a lot of people that are stuck home right now. So, no matter what's going on for us, sharing some content with people that are stuck at home, that's super important to me.
Absolutely.
And super important to you. And so, I may be too focused on that to have the cruise blues. And just the idea that cruising right now, there's so many things going on in the world and a lot of challenging things. It just doesn't make sense right now to, if I could go on a cruise, I'm not 100% sure that I would go on a cruise right now.
Right.
And that's a reality for at least 10,000 people. There are at least 10,000 people still on cruise ships out on the sea. And there's some pretty challenging situations. Let me talk to you about this one. And I just made a video about this today on the Lido Loca channel, the Lido Loca show. The MS Zondam has passengers and crew that they're having trouble. They've got respiratory sickness. They don't know what it is. They don't have any official test. But this cruise left Buenos Aires, Argentina in the early stages of the month, I think like the 7th of March. They were supposed to finish their cruise in San Antonio, Chile. And all of a sudden, no place in South America would take them. And so they pointed the ship north, and their goal was to go to Fort Lauderdale and disembark that cruise ship on the 31st. Well, now that they started out earlier in the week with about 40 cases, now they're up to 140 cases.
Oh, wow.
And so Fort Lauderdale is a little hesitant to let them disembark. But it's a cruise ship full of citizens from all over the world. There's American citizens, people that are residents of Florida. What do you do with the people that are on the cruise ship? I mean, Fort Lauderdale obviously saying, I don't want to risk my community, that kind of thing. It's hard. Like, if you were the boss and you could decide whether that ship got off in Fort Lauderdale or not, what would you do?
I mean, like, from watching the past, they need to get off the ship.
Right.
So, I mean, whether them getting off the ship and going straight into quarantine, in a safe location, I mean, that's what has to get done.
Yeah, that's kind of my take on it. There are people out there that are saying, well, they knew the risk, but I don't think you could just leave these people at sea. But at the same time...
You can, though. We've seen it.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think there's a positive outcome if you just leave these people at sea.
No, that's it. Exactly.
But the interesting thing for me is that at the same time, the people that manage that port there in Fort Lauderdale, they have a responsibility to their community. So I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you have to take these people off the cruise ship, and then you have to put them in quarantine. There's been examples over the last couple of weeks of where cruise ships have just dropped passengers off, only to find out later... Maybe they didn't know, maybe they did know, only to find out later that somebody on that ship had some sort of sickness.
Right.
And they just cut people loose and put them on planes and flew them all over the country. And I think that's super irresponsible, at least on this one. And then there's a couple instances of ships going to San Diego, the port of San Diego in California. They've laid out some pretty specific guidelines for what it takes for these people to get off of the cruise ship.
Right.
And so I just think that that's the place that we're at. It blows my mind that there's still... there's almost like 10 cruise ships out there. It's still 10,000 passengers. I think I would be a little worried if I was on a cruise ship right now. Like, there's reports coming off of the Zaandam that, everybody's locked down in their cabin. They drop the food off outside the door, knock on the door and just leave the food on the ground. It doesn't sound like a great time. You hear a lot of people like, oh, I wouldn't mind being stranded on a cruise ship.
I wouldn't want to be out there.
That doesn't sound that fun.
No.
That doesn't sound that fun. Well, let's lighten it up a little bit. Let's just say that all this is done.
Okay.
And we're getting ready to cruise, and you could go on any cruise ship that you wanted to go on.
Okay.
What would be the first cruise ship that you would go on when you can?
Symphony of the Seas.
The Symphony of the Seas. Where is Symphony the latest in the Oasis class?
It is.
So the world's largest cruise ship, the Symphony of the Seas.
I mean, go big or go home, right?
What part of the world would you want to go to?
When you're on that ship, it doesn't even matter. So
you would just be living that ship life.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, I would love to see Italy when it's healthy and.
Yeah. No, we're saying that everything's copacetic everywhere.
Okay. All right, give me the biggest ship and take me to Italy.
The biggest ship and go to Italy. What do you want to do?
Actually, I want to see the tulips.
The tulips. Where at?
Yeah, where is that? In like Holland?
Oh, really? Amsterdam, something
Amsterdam,
like that?
Yeah. I want to see I want to see the tulips so bad. You ever see pictures of that? Like, just the tulip farms, and it's so beautiful. I love tulips.
I'm trying to think, like, if I could go on any cruise ship right now, like, if you gave me a ticket today, I would probably jump back on an Oasis class. It's been enough time that since we've been on that size ship, I would like to go back on that size ship. And then if I could go to anywhere, like I would go to the Mediterranean. I would go I would go to Italy. I would go to, I'd go to Israel if you could. I would go to some of those places and see stuff that's really old.
Right.
I think that's the great thing for me about cruising is that you have so many opportunities.
And just so many options, right?
So many options.
Yeah.
So many options.
Yeah, like we don't even have to get in an airplane anymore, right? We could just take a transatlantic there, hang out for 2 or 3 weeks, and then take one back.
Just do the world cruise.
That's right.
What? So, the longest cruise we've ever been on, 8 days?
Have we been on an 8-day yet?
I think it was called an 8-day, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it was, though. I think it was 7 days.
8 nights, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Which, how long do you think you could comfortably stay on a cruise ship? Let's say, so you're in an interior cabin that just has enough room on each side of the bed to walk beside the bed. Mm-hmm. How long could you stay in that cabin?
Maybe a week.
A week. But if you had a balcony that had like a couch, that size cabin, how long do you think you could stay there?
I could probably stay there 10, 14 days maybe.
I think I could do a month in that scenario.
A month?
I think I could do a month.
Wow.
I don't know that I could, this is what I've been asking myself. There's been 7-day cruises where I'm like, oh, I'm kind of ready to go home. Right. But then there's been 7-day cruises where I'm like, oh, I don't want to go home at all. Right. So I don't know. I don't know when that turns. Like, could I do 30 days? Could I do 60 days? It would be interesting. Like, maybe if somebody was doing my laundry or something like that, I don't think I'd like to deal with all my stuff after it all gets dirty and stuff like that. Yeah. So you think 14 days?
I mean, I'll try a month.
Try a month.
Nothing but to figure it out by trying it, right?
Nothing to it but to do it.
That's right. Didn't Don what did he do to go to Japan? How long was that?
Yeah, so our friend Don did 2 cruises, and I think he was between traveling and I think he was on cruise ships for like 28 days.
Yeah, that's a long time.
But the interesting thing is, like, he switched ships, so that seems like that could be more tolerable. Like, right. Like, as long as you're switching ships, that probably would make it fresh. It wouldn't feel like you're just stuck in the same place over and over.
Yeah, I don't think I would go stir crazy or anything. As long as we have internet and
coffee,
we're good.
Internet,
we're good to go after that.
Coffee,
internet, coffee,
All right, so let's do this. Let's say you're on a cruise.
Budget for the casino.
What is one thing you wish was included in the cruise price? So say that, here's your options: internet, coffee, alcohol, specialty dining. Out of those, which ones do you wish was free?
Probably internet.
Internet. Mm-hmm. That is a big expense for us.
Yeah, I mean, like, they have regular coffee. They don't have specialty coffee, so I could get away with just drinking regular coffee. But, like, internet is a necessity, unfortunately, nowadays. Like, especially for us. There are a lot of people that do go on a cruise ship just to, cut off from the rest of the world. But, like, for us, it's a necessity to have the Wi-Fi to continue our work. And my thought process on specialty dining is it should be included anyway. So, I mean, like, that's kind of I don't know. It's just another way of course, to have a revenue stream. And I get that, but I just think it should be included anyway.
Yeah, I think I probably would pick internet also. That's one of those things. I don't really drink a lot. There are alternatives to coffee. Right. And then obviously there's always included food. So yeah, I guess I would take free internet. Yeah. I don't know, man. Some of the specialty dining restaurants are pretty good though.
I mean, they're delicious, but they should be included.
I would have to do the cost analysis. So a week's worth of internet, is that more or less than me eating at a nice specialty dining restaurant every night of the cruise?
I think the Wi-Fi is more expensive.
Yeah, it could be.
For multiple devices.
It could be.
Yes, I think so.
Well, Jenny, we
Woody.
It's so weird because we don't know when we're going to cruise again.
No, we don't.
We do have some group cruises coming up, some group activities.
We do. Very exciting.
The first one is in July, but we haven't heard anything in a way that would suggest that's not going to happen. But then we have a huge group cruise with the other creators sharing at sea in October. And then we have group cruises next year. So we're definitely going to be back on cruise ships. We're going to be hanging out with the people, but it seems so uncertain right now.
It does. But you know what? It's very exciting to be able to go ahead and plan, because so much of the fun of cruising is the planning. So even though it's being canceled, we have another chance to plan the perfect vacation. So
all we can do is dream.
We can dream, and you got to stay positive, because once you go negative, you don't want that kind of stress, and you want to keep your body strong to fight off all this craziness.
That's probably a good way to kind of wrap this out. Cruising really, it's our life, it's our livelihood. We have a passion for it. But right now, what's going on in the world is really just kind of a time for people to reset and to think about things like, are you getting enough sleep? How do you manage your stress? Are you working on your health? Are you working on your fitness? This crisis has really shown that people that are not in the best health really can be vulnerable to things that they never even thought they could be vulnerable to. So while we're out here talking about cruising, I would be remiss if we did not say, make sure you're getting plenty of sleep, make sure you're dealing with your stress, and please follow all the guidelines that are out there for social distancing. Man, if you can do anything for people that have to work, healthcare workers, first responders, people that are working in grocery stores, truck drivers, if you know any of those people and you can give them a kind word or do anything positive for them, they're really keeping everything going right now. And we're going to be relying on them as we go through this process. So if that's you out there, a big thanks to you. And if you know anybody like that, make sure that you take care of them. But yeah, so an interesting episode of the Lido Loca Cruise podcast, overshadowed by what's going on. But I don't know what else there is to talk about, really.
There's nothing. Hey, how about them stocks?
Yeah, stocks is all part of the equation.
That's right. That's right.
The cruise stocks have been doing really good this week, but now that news has come out that they may not be a part of the relief package, they're down a little bit today. So that's going to be interesting. I know a lot of people have invested in cruise stocks right now.
Yeah.
Interesting times. Well, thank you guys so much for spending some time with us. I hope you're doing okay out there. If you found us here, if you found us through podcast, thank you for subscribing through your favorite podcast outlet. And if you found us in video form here on YouTube, thank you so much for watching us here. Make sure you subscribe. There's information both in the show notes and in the video description about what we have going on. And make sure you check out our main channel, Lido Loca, for all the latest cruise news and commentary. And join our Facebook group, the Lido Loca Cruising Community. Connect with 10,000 other cruisers with that common passion for cruising. We'd love to have you over there.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. Another episode of the podcast in the books.
Episode 13.
My name's Tony.
And I'm Jenny.
And we are Lido Loca. And until the next time.
We'll see you on the Lido.
We'll see you on the Lido.
Bye.
Bye.